than we had thought. And this alone suggests a simple explanation to teens' behavior. Today, I'd like to take a look into the fascinating brain of a teenager by explaining how the teen brain develops and how this development makes teens different from their parents. To begin, research on the teen brain has uncovered some interesting facts about its development. Children physically change and develop as they enter their teen years. These changes can be quite apparent. However, the more vital and unseen changes occur in the brain. Like all other organs, the brain is a part of the body and changes as teens grow. As teenagers, we may encounter pressure, stress, temptation, and challenges that our brain is not necessarily ready for. It may seem like teens have problems facing these issues because they lack the experience, but like the rest of the body, the brain just hasn't finished growing yet. Dr. Garner also says that the prefrontal cortex, which sits directly behind the eyes, does not appear fully mature until the age of 24. This part of the brain is known to regulate mood, impulse control, attention, and the ability to think abstractly. However, the amygdala, which sits deep inside the brain, known to regulate aggression, emotion, and instinctual responses, appears to be fully mature much earlier on. Many neuroscientists think that this mismatch in brain maturity may be a simple explanation to teens' behavior. For example, if you ask a teen if it's a good idea to get in a vehicle with friends who have been drinking, most would answer no. But so many do and would in the heat of the situation. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for this. In calmer situations, the prefrontal cortex is able to think abstractly and evaluate the potential outcomes. But in the heat of this situation, the amygdala, which is more developed, thinks to just do it before the prefrontal cortex even has time to outweigh the other's decision. Now that we know more about how the teen brain develops, we're able to understand why teens make decisions differently than adults. One area they differ in is in risk-taking. Everyone has a tendency to risk-taking, according to John Adams, a risk analyst at University College. When finding what range of odds is comfortable, people tend to stay to the same level of riskiness, leaving some people with a very high tolerance for risks, and others much more cautious. There's not a risk-taking gene. However, there are many characteristics that make a risk-taking person. For example, testosterone inclines males to being larger risk-takers. Men between the ages of 15 to 25 are much more risk-prone than women of the same age. The same reason young men don't receive good rates on car insurance. According to Marilyn Price Mitchell, PhD, as children enter their teen years, they begin to merge what they know with the outside world with their psychological selves. They search for their own identities, separate from their parents. Teens and risk-taking is most oftenly associated with drinking, drugs, and driving dangerously fast. But risk-taking can also be associated with positive activities, like rock climbing or community service. According to Jan Gumbiner, teenagers are impulsive because the logical part of the brain develops faster than the emotional part. However, Maya Slakovitz suggests that teens are less likely to think that thought, "Oh, it's not going to happen to me," than adults, because teens actually tend to overestimate the odds of something bad happening. There are two sides to this. Teens may be too rational about their decision-making. Valerie Reyna, a psychologist at Cornell University, asked adults absurd questions like, "Is it a good idea to drink Drano?" Obviously, the adults immediately answered no, but the adolescents took twice as long to think about their answer. Scans show that when teens contemplate the risk of something bad happening, they primarily use the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, while adults primarily use the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. The problem is, teens weigh in benefits, like feeling good and fitting into the crowd, into their rational decision-making. Other brain research explains why some of our reactions go back to our ancestors. Our brains are exquisitely adapted to respond to risks. When faced with a cliff or a predator, our brain is wired to make certain decisions that kept our ancestors alive. The problem is, our brains have not evolved to keep up with these new dangers, because many of these new dangers haven't existed that long. This explains why some of our fears just don't make sense. For example, snakes and spiders, which were a fear to our ancestors, cause fear out of proportion to the threat they pose today, while dangers that should frighten us, like driving too fast, do not. Many of these new dangers haven't been around that long, so they haven't been engraved in our brain. That's why cars don't make us naturally afraid. In conclusion, we now know that the teen brain develops slower than the teen's body, and is different from the adult brain. While knowing this might help parents understand their teen's behavior better, it probably won't improve their teen's actions. So teachers and parents, bear with us as we continue to drive too fast, make impulsive decisions, and generally drive you crazy. We will eventually grow into our brains and be the adults you will be proud of.
Is Abby out there?
Yes.
Okay, she's next. You're on.
My sister's voice was like mountain water in a silver pitcher. The clear beauty of it, it cools you and it lifts you up beyond your heat and beyond your body. That's what I like to remember. And that's what I told to all of her therapists. I wanted them to know her, to know that who they saw was not all there was to see. To me, Rose was perfect. A mental illness can be devastating in a family, and sometimes the family of the mentally ill have to hold on to the good memories forever. Silverwater by Amy Blue. Rose had her first psychotic break when she was 15. She was in hospitals for the next 10 years, and our best family therapist was Dr. Thorne. Rose moved into a halfway house. Rose would still go off from time to time, and the voices would tell her to do bad things, but Dr. Thorne and my mother could usually bring her back. After 5 good years, Dr. Thorne died. Rose held on tight for 7 days, though. She took her meds, and she rearranged her room about 100 times. But Rose stopped taking her meds, and the halfway house wouldn't keep her after she pitched another patient down the stairs. My father called the insurance company and found out that Rose's new and improved psychiatric coverage wouldn't begin for 45 days. I put all of her stuff into a garbage bag and we walked out of the halfway house. No meds, Rose said. Rosie, do you want to drive the new car? My mother asked. Rosie's face lit up. I'd love to drive that car. If you take your medication after a while, you'll be able to drive the new car. That's the deal. Meds, car. My mother said, careful not to heat up Rose's paranoia. You've got yourself a deal, darling. I was living about an hour away then, teaching English. I went home every few days for dinner. I came on a Sunday in the early afternoon to help my father garden. It was something we had always enjoyed together. Mother and Rose were down at the lake, and I didn't even get into the house until 4 when I saw that someone had broken our piano bench into 5 neatly stacked pieces and placed them exactly where our piano bench usually was. We were having such a nice time, I couldn't bear to bring it up, my father said, standing in the doorway. What did Mom say? She said, better the bench than the piano, and then your sister just lay down and wept, so your mother took her down to the lake. This can't go on, Vi. We have 27 days left. Your mother, she gets no sleep because Rose doesn't sleep. And if I could just pay $27,000 to keep her in the hospital until insurance takes over, I would do it. He put his hand over his mouth, and he went back out to the garden. I couldn't see if he was crying. He stayed outside, and I stayed inside until Rose and my mother came home from the lake. My mother kissed me lightly and told Rose to go up to her room to change out her wet pants. Rose's eyes grew very wide. Never, I will never! She began banging her head with rhythmic intensity against the kitchen floor, throwing all of her weight behind each attack. My mother put her arms around Rose's waist and tried to hold her back. Rose just shook her off, not even looking around to see what was slowing her down. My mother crumpled next to the refrigerator. Violet, please. I threw myself onto the kitchen floor, becoming the spot that Rose was smacking her head against. She stopped, a fraction of an inch short of my stomach. Oh, Vi, Mommy, I'm sorry, please don't hate me. She staggered to her feet and ran wailing to her room. My father heard the wailing and he came running in. Let me see. He held my mother's head and looked closely for bruises on her pale, small face. What happened? Where's Rose? Rose got upset, and when she went running upstairs, she pushed Mom out of the way. I've only told 3 lies in my life, and that was my second. At dinner, Rose would barely eat, and she hummed the McDonald's theme song over and over and over again, pausing only to spill her juice all over the front of her shirt. She began weeping again. My father looked at my mother and handed Rose's napkin. She dabbed at herself, and the tears stopped. I want to go to bed. I want to go to bed and be in my head. I want to go to bed and be in my head and be in my head. I want to go to bed and be in my head and just wear red. For red is the color my baby wore. And once more, it's true. Yes, it is. It's true. Please don't wear red tonight. Oh, please don't wear red tonight. I want to go to bed. Okay, Rose. It's okay. Just calm down. We'll go upstairs and you can get ready for bed. And then Mommy will come upstairs and she'll get ready for bed with you and she'll say goodnight too. It's okay, Rose. Just calm down. My father reached out his hand and Rose grasped it. And they walked out of the dining room together. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went down the hall and I looked into Rose's room for no reason. But she wasn't there. I could feel her absence. I went outside and I saw her footprints, darkening the grass into the woods. Rosie, are you here? Are you all right? I almost fell over her, huge and white in the moonlight. Her head was flung back. Rosie! Her breathing was very slow. Closing time, she whispered. I believe that's what she said. I sat with her, uncovering the bottle of pills by her hand, and watched the stars fade. The day of the funeral, my mother, she played the piano, and I closed my eyes, and I saw my sister, 14 years old again, singing. That sweet sound, it held us tight, flowing around us, through our hearts, rising, still rising.
What did Ronald Reagan